Welcome, stargazers, to the Sleepy Astronomer, a place where we drift through the universe with curiosity and calm. Before we begin tonight's cosmic question, take a moment to settle in, breathe deeply, and let your mind float among the stars. Tonight, we're pondering a strange and dreamy possibility. What if the moon disappeared? What would happen to our nights, our oceans, and even life itself? But first, where in the world are you watching from? Are you lying under northern skies, or somewhere far in the southern hemisphere, where the stars look just a little different? Wherever you are, you're most welcome here. Let's begin our gentle journey through space and wonder. Imagine walking outside on a clear night. You glance up, expecting that familiar glowing orb to greet you, casting a soft, silvery light across the quiet earth. But instead, there's nothing. Just a deep, dark sky, sprinkled with stars. The moon is gone. At first, it might not seem so different. The stars appear brighter, more numerous. Without the moon's soft light washing over the heavens, the night sky becomes a window into a much older, more ancient universe. The Milky Way would stretch across the sky in a brilliant arc, its shimmering bands more visible than they've been in centuries, at least to those of us who live away from the glare of city lights. It would be beautiful, in a haunting kind of way. But something would feel missing. You might not even notice it at first. A strange quietness, a strange emptiness. The moon has been with us for all of human history. Its light has guided travellers across oceans and deserts. It has watched over lovers in the stillness of the night, and it has been the silent witness to thousands of generations dreaming beneath its glow. Its absence would leave a silence that goes beyond sound. Without the moon, our nights would become noticeably darker, especially during the new moon phase, when the moon is already hidden. But now, that darkness would be permanent. In remote places, the stars would dazzle. But in the countryside, on the edges of forests, by the sea, places where the moon used to shine like a gentle guardian, the dark might feel heavier. Even in familiar surroundings, shadows would vanish, replaced by a velvet blackness that hides everything. For early humans, the moon was more than a light. It was a clock. It measured time in predictable cycles. The waxing and waning of the moon helped people track the passage of weeks and months. Without it, the rhythm of time would have been harder to feel. Today, we have calendars and clocks, of course, but somewhere deep in our biology, that ancient lunar rhythm still beats quietly. And then there's the beauty. The moon in all her phases. A slender crescent hanging delicately in the evening sky, or a full, radiant orb bathing the world in pale light. Poets have written to her, lovers have whispered beneath her, and children have reached out to touch her with tiny hands. Without her, the sky would lose some of its soul. It would still be majestic, but it would be colder, lonelier. Artists, photographers, and dreamers alike would miss that celestial companion. The moon doesn't just light up the world, it stirs something within us, something ancient, something soft. And think of the moonlight itself, how it falls on rooftops, on leaves, on snow. Moonlight has a texture, a feeling. It doesn't burn like the sun. It glows. It hushes. It invites stillness. People don't write songs about sunlight the way they do about moonlight. The moon evokes mystery, memory, melancholy, and without it, the nights might become less poetic. Even the ocean would look different. The moon's reflection on water is a quiet kind of magic. It dances, it ripples, it leads the eye and the imagination. Without it, the sea might seem more endless, more unknowable. The waves would still rise and fall, but they would do so under a darker, more solemn sky. Imagine full moons you've seen in your life. Maybe one over the mountains, or one rising golden above a city skyline. Maybe you've stood in awe as a blood moon took the sky, or you've watched it vanish behind clouds on a cold night. All those memories would remain, but they'd never happen again. The disappearance of the moon wouldn't just alter the physical world, it would change the feeling of night itself. The sky would become a little less familiar, a little more alien. You might find yourself gazing upward and feeling a strange longing, like something beloved has left, and taken a small part of your heart with it. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep, know that the moon is still there, quiet, watching, glowing gently above, always returning, always guiding. And that is a comforting thought, isn't it? When the moon disappears from the sky, it's not just the world outside that changes. Something shifts within us too. Our inner world, our rhythms, our dreams, all feel the quiet absence. For as long as humans have existed, the moon has been a silent conductor of our sleep, our moods, and the invisible melodies of our biology. Without it, the darkness becomes different, deeper, quieter, but also unsettled. Moonlight has long been a subtle signal to our bodies. We may not notice it consciously, but our ancestors certainly did. Before electric lights, the waxing and waning of the moon determined how dark the night would be. On full moon nights, hunters and foragers could see better. Villagers might stay up a little later, gather outside, talk by the fire, or travel across familiar landscapes. On darker nights, sleep came early, and the world tucked itself in. Even now, studies show that the full moon affects human sleep. Some people sleep more lightly or struggle to fall asleep when the moon is full. Others report vivid dreams or even a restless feeling, as if the moon, in all her brightness, is tugging at something within us. It's subtle, but it's real. Our bodies remember the moon, even if our minds forget to look up. Now imagine that memory erased. With no moon, the subtle cues we've evolved alongside would vanish. Nights would become uniformly dark, a kind of permanent blackout for our senses. That might sound peaceful at first, and for some it might be. But for many, the absence of variation, the loss of that gentle waxing and waning, could feel strangely unnatural. We humans thrive on rhythm, the beat of the heart, the rise and fall of breath, the steady ticking of the days and nights. The moon has always offered us a monthly rhythm, a slow, celestial breath. And when that's taken away, something inside us may feel adrift. Without moonlight, night becomes a single, unchanging canvas of black. For those who live far from city lights, the stars might take over beautifully. But in cities, where artificial lights outshine even the brightest constellations, the darkness could feel heavier. And without the soft counterbalance of moonlight, that artificial glow might seem colder, more mechanical, and dreams. Oh, how the moon stirs dreams. She has always been a symbol of mystery, of hidden desires, of what lies beneath consciousness. In stories, the moon is a place of secrets, of transformation. Think of the werewolf myths, the moon goddesses, the lunatics. Yes, the very word lunatic comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. There's an ancient belief, one that lives on in our language and our literature, that the moon doesn't just watch over our dreams, she enters them. Without her, what would happen to the world of sleep? Would dreams become duller? Would we forget them more quickly? Or would the unchanging blackness of night lull us into deeper, less colourful slumber? Perhaps even our emotions would shift. Moonlight has a way of softening the world. It silvers the edges of things. It gives shadows a grace they don't have under the harsh light of day. Lovers walk under moonlight. Poets write by it. Musicians sing to it. There is a gentleness to moonlit nights that invites reflection, solitude, even melancholy. The beautiful kind. The kind that makes you think, feel, remember. Without the moon, would our nights lose some of their magic? Would they become just another space between days, instead of the sacred pause they've always been? There's also the quiet power of lunar rituals. Across cultures, people have gathered under the moon to meditate, to pray, to celebrate, to grieve. The new moon marks beginnings. The full moon marks culmination. Many spiritual traditions see the moon as a mirror of our own emotional cycles, changing yet reliable, always returning, always reflecting back something within us. If she vanished, those rituals would lose their anchor. Our connection to the sky would become looser, more distant, like a song we once loved but can no longer hum, because we've forgotten the melody. And then there is the loneliness. The moon is more than a light. She is a presence, a face in the sky, a companion. How many lonely hearts have looked up and found comfort in her? How many people lying awake at night have whispered their hopes or sorrows into the sky, knowing the moon was listening? She doesn't speak, but she hears. Without that silent listener in the sky, night might feel more isolating. Not just darker, but emptier, less alive. And yet, even in this imagined moonless world, perhaps we would adjust. Humans are adaptable. We might find new rhythms, new stories, new symbols. But something would always be missing. Something old, something sacred. The quiet glow that once watched over us while we slept. So tonight, as you drift off, know that she's still there. Steady, gentle, watching over your dreams. Let her soft light guide you into peaceful sleep. And remember, even when clouds hide her face, the moon is always with us. The oceans have always listened to the moon. Her silent pull guides their every breath, a vast, slow inhaling and exhaling across the surface of the earth. The tides are not just a curious effect of gravity. They are the heartbeat of the planet. Twice each day, the waters rise and fall in response to the moon's gentle tug, a dance that has continued for billions of years. But if the moon were to vanish, the rhythm would falter. Without the moon, tides would still exist, but they would be shadows of what they once were. That's because the sun also pulls on Earth's oceans, though much less powerfully. Lunar gravity is the dominant force shaping our tides, responsible for the dramatic movements we see along coastlines every single day. Take away the moon, and the tides would shrink to perhaps 1/3 of their current strength. The difference between high tide and low tide would be barely noticeable in many places. The sea would grow quiet. This might sound peaceful, even calming, but in truth it would create a silent disruption across Earth's ecosystems, a slow unravelling of delicate balances. Life in the oceans, especially along the coasts, is intimately connected to the rhythm of the tides. Creatures like crabs, mussels, sea stars, and many species of fish depend on the rising and falling of the water to feed, reproduce and survive. On rocky shorelines, the tide pools, those magical little worlds teeming with life, rely on daily tidal action to flush them with oxygen and nutrients. Without strong tides, these miniature ecosystems would become stagnant. The creatures that live in them would struggle, then vanish. Sea turtles, whose nesting cycles are timed by the moon and the tides, would lose their way. Even coral reefs, which thrive in specific conditions shaped by tidal flows, could begin to suffer. Beyond the shoreline, the effects would ripple outward. Ocean currents, those vast circulating rivers that move heat and nutrients across the planet, are influenced by tidal mixing. Without the moon to stir the waters, those currents would begin to slow. The oceans would become more stratified, with warm water sitting still above cold. This might sound subtle, but the consequences would reach into the sky. Weather systems are shaped by ocean temperatures and the way heat moves through water. With slower currents and weakened tides, global climate patterns could shift in unpredictable ways. Some regions might become hotter and drier, others might flood. The change would not be immediate, but it would be relentless. Year by year, without the moon's quiet hand stirring the pot, Earth's climate would become less stable. And then there's the question of ancient life. Long before cities, long before humans, there was the sea, and life's earliest forms emerged in the shallow, intertidal zones. Those areas that are sometimes land, sometimes sea, they offered both shelter and variety, a changing world where life could adapt and evolve. Without strong tides, those zones would shrink, and with them, a stage that has hosted evolution's earliest drama would begin to fade. It's humbling to realise that even now, after billions of years, the moon still shapes life on Earth. Not just spiritually or symbolically, but physically, constantly, and profoundly. She is not just a decoration in the sky. She is a sculptor of oceans. And the emotional connection we feel to the sea is, in many ways, a connection to the moon herself. Standing on a beach at high tide, hearing the waves crash, feeling the salt wind on your skin, all of that is part of a lunar song. The moon sings through the sea. And without her, that song would become quiet. Still beautiful, perhaps, but muted. A lullaby missing its melody. Fishermen would notice. Sailors would notice. Entire coastal communities who have built their lives around the dependable rhythm of the tides would be forced to adapt. Boats that used to rise and fall with the sea would sit strangely still. Harbours would lose their familiar patterns. And many cultures, whose calendars and traditions revolve around tidal movements, would lose part of their heritage. It's easy to forget, in our busy electric lives, how deeply we are connected to the water. But water is where we come from. It's where all life began. And the moon has always been its quiet guide. Take her away, and we are left with a planet that feels just a little more still, a little less alive. So next time you hear the sound of waves or see the tide creeping up the shore, remember, you're witnessing the moon's love letter to Earth. A pull, a release, a pulse. Again and again, it is one of the oldest relationships in the universe. And tonight, as you fall asleep to the thought of a moonlit tide rolling in and out, you might find comfort in knowing that she's still there, high above, holding the ocean in her invisible arms, cradling the water, and with it, all of us. Far above us, the earth quietly spins, tilted like a wobbling top at an angle of about 23.5 degrees. This tilt, small as it may seem, is the reason we have seasons. The turning dance of spring, summer, autumn and winter. But this balance isn't a given. It's not stable on its own. The moon, often thought of as only a nightlight or a romantic presence in the sky, is actually Earth's silent guardian. She holds our planet steady in space. Without her, that balance would falter. Imagine a world where Earth begins to tilt and shift over thousands, even millions of years, slowly, quietly, but inevitably. Without the moon's gravitational presence, that 23.5 degree tilt could begin to change, potentially wobbling wildly between 10 degrees and 60 degrees or more. To the naked eye, it would be hard to notice at first. But over time, this gentle wobble would grow into something far more dramatic. The moon acts like a stabilizing hand on a spinning globe, preventing Earth from tipping too far in one direction or another. Without it, our planet becomes vulnerable to the gravitational influences of other celestial bodies, the Sun, Jupiter, even distant stars. These forces can tug at the Earth ever so slightly, and without the moon's anchoring effect, the cumulative result could send our planet's axis tilting in new, unpredictable ways. Why does this matter? Because the tilt of Earth is what determines how much sunlight each part of the planet receives throughout the year. It creates the seasons. A world with a shifting axial tilt would experience seasons that could become extreme, chaotic, and eventually unrecognizable. In one scenario, Earth might tilt farther toward the Sun. This would result in scorching summers where the heat is unbearable, especially closer to the equator. The poles would melt, not gradually, but catastrophically. Sea levels would rise not by inches, but by feet, swallowing coastlines, cities, entire countries. Elsewhere, winters could grow so bitter and long that regions once lush with greenery would become frozen wastelands. Then the tilt might swing in the other direction. Imagine Antarctica bathed in warm sunlight for months at a time, while areas that once basked in tropical warmth are plunged into endless winters. Farming as we know it would become almost impossible. Entire ecosystems would struggle to adapt. Animal migration patterns tied to the regularity of seasons would collapse. Plants would bloom too early, or too late, or not at all. Weather would become wild and erratic. The delicate balance that gives us monsoon rains, spring thaws, and autumn harvests would break down. Some areas might flood repeatedly, others might suffer years of drought. Entire human civilizations have risen and fallen based on climate stability. Without the moon, that stability would unravel. But it's not just the weather and the seasons. The psychological impact of such a change would be immense. Human beings are deeply tied to the rhythms of nature, even if we don't always realize it. The turning of the seasons marks our holidays, our traditions, our emotional cycles. When we sense the first chill in the air, or see the first flowers of spring, something stirs inside us. A sense of continuity, of time moving forward. If those patterns broke down, it would be disorienting. Children might grow up without knowing what a true season is. Snow could fall in July. Trees might stay green all year in one decade and lose their leaves in another. Culture, art and memory, all the things we create in response to nature, would shift too. Even further, the loss of seasonal predictability would affect agriculture profoundly. Ancient peoples based their planting and harvesting schedules on the stars, the solstices, the equinoxes, all rooted in the tilt of the earth. Even today, despite our technological advances, most of our food systems depend on a relatively stable climate. Without it, food shortages would become widespread. Economies would crumble. Migration would increase. Conflict would likely follow, as people compete for habitable land and reliable resources. The moon, in her quiet orbit, protects us from this fate. By pulling gently on Earth's equator through gravitational interaction, she damps the wobble. Like a hand on the shoulder of a restless child, she keeps our seasons more or less predictable, our weather somewhat stable, and our lives more livable than we usually realise. What's most remarkable is that we don't often think of the moon this way. We see her as distant, poetic, mysterious, a beauty in the sky. But behind her calm face is an ancient strength, a role as guardian of Earth's delicate balance. Her disappearance wouldn't cause immediate chaos. The Earth wouldn't suddenly tip over in the night. But over centuries, then millennia, the slow invisible process would begin, a turning of the axis, a shifting of light, a transformation of the world as we know it. Tonight, as you lie beneath the same sky that has watched over us for all of human history, remember that the moon isn't just a lovely light in the darkness. She is a partner in the dance of Earth. She is the keeper of our seasons, the guardian of our balance, the silent force that makes life on this planet not only possible, but beautiful. And she is still there, steady, dependable, watching from afar, making sure the Earth continues to tilt just the right amount toward the sunrises and the seasons we cherish. Time is something we rarely notice until it begins to feel off. A day feels long, a night feels short, or the hours seem to slip away without warning. But behind the ticking of clocks and the turning of calendars lies a deeper rhythm, the Earth's rotation. One full spin gives us a day, and that spin is not fixed. It is, in fact, slowly changing. And the quiet presence responsible for that change, the moon. Over billions of years, the moon has been gently slowing down Earth's rotation. It does this through a process called tidal friction. As the moon pulls on Earth's oceans, it creates bulges in the water, tidal bulges. that try to align with the moon's position in the sky. But because Earth rotates faster than the moon orbits, these bulges lag slightly behind. That lag creates a subtle drag, like the moon is holding Earth by the hand and slowly pulling her to a stop. It's like a dance, with one partner gently slowing the other's spinning steps. Right now, a day on Earth lasts about 24 hours. But it hasn't always been that way. Hundreds of millions of years ago, a day lasted only 22 hours. Go back over 1 billion years, and a single day could be as short as 18 hours. The moon has steadily, patiently stretched our days longer and longer, adding milliseconds every century. It's a process so slow that we never notice it. But take the moon away, and that process would stop. And in fact, without the moon's steady gravitational pull, Earth's rotation might eventually speed up again. Not dramatically at first, not in a way we'd notice in a single lifetime, but over tens of millions of years, the Earth could begin to spin faster. Days would slowly grow shorter. The sun would rise and set more quickly. And the very pace of life on our planet would begin to change. Imagine a world where a day lasts only 18 hours again. The sun rises in a blink, races across the sky, and is gone before the evening can settle in. Nights grow shorter too, not long enough for deep rest in some regions. Our biological clocks, finely tuned over generations to the 24-hour cycle, would struggle to adjust. Sleep disorders could increase. Jet lag wouldn't just be something you feel on vacation, it could become a chronic feature of everyday life. Our bodies are built around this circadian rhythm, a 24-hour cycle that influences our hormones, metabolism, alertness, and sleep. Melatonin production, for example, is triggered by darkness, peaking during nighttime to help us rest. Shorter nights would mean less melatonin. People might struggle with fatigue, insomnia, or anxiety. It would be as though the Earth was spinning just a little too fast for us to keep up. And that's only the human side of the story. Plants depend on light too. Their growth cycles, flowering times, and ability to photosynthesize are all influenced by the length of day and night. If those durations begin to shorten, crops could grow more quickly, or not at all. Some species might flourish, others might fail. Agriculture, already a delicate balance of climate, soil, and sunlight, would need to adapt again, just as it did thousands of years ago when humans first began to farm, and not all crops would survive the transition. Animals, especially those that are active at dawn or dusk, crepuscular creatures, would be confused by the changing light. Their hunting patterns, mating behaviours, and migration cycles might falter. Nocturnal animals would have less time to move under the cover of darkness. Predators and prey would be thrown into a new rhythm, and entire ecosystems might need to recalibrate. Even the wind would feel different. Earth's rotation plays a role in the movement of air masses. Faster rotation could subtly shift weather patterns, changing how storms form and travel. The Coriolis effect, which causes hurricanes to spin and ocean currents to flow, is tied to Earth's rotation speed. Any change, however gradual, would alter the shape of climate over time. There's also the long view, the cosmic timeline of Earth's rotation and how it fits into the solar system's vast machinery. The moon's slow drag on Earth has been creating a balance not just here, but in the relationship between planet and satellite. The moon is actually drifting away from us, at a rate of about 3.8 centimetres per year. as she does, Earth slows a little more. It's a graceful exchange of energy, angular momentum shared between two celestial bodies. Remove the moon, and that balance collapses. Earth becomes a lone spinner, untethered, gradually quickening, like a toy top regaining speed after a hand gives it a fresh twist. There's something poetic about the moon making our days longer. It's as if she wants us to slow down, to stretch out the morning, to savour the afternoon, to linger in twilight. Her presence encourages stillness, reflection, rest. Her pull slows us not just physically, but emotionally too. In her light, time seems to breathe. Without her, that breath would quicken, the days would rush, the nights would shrink. And while it might take eons for these effects to fully unfold, the seed would be planted the moment the moon vanished. So tonight, as the Earth slowly turns under the moon's watchful eye, know that your day, this day, has been carefully shaped by a force so gentle, so constant, that we almost forget it's there. But it is. And in its quiet patience, it gives us the gift of time. The time to rest, the time to live, the time to dream. High above, the moon sails silently through the sky, seen by some, sensed by all. To us, she is just a glowing presence. But to the animal kingdom, the moon is a signal, a guide, a pulse in the sky. Across deserts, oceans, jungles, and forests, countless creatures live by her rhythm. They feed, move, hide, and mate with the rising and falling of her light. So what happens when that light disappears? Without the moon, the natural world would feel an immediate and growing sense of confusion. For many species, moonlight is not just illumination, it's a clock and a compass. Let's begin at the edge of the sea, where the moon's presence is strongest and most essential. Coral reefs, those glowing underwater cities of colour and life, rely on the moon for one of their most breathtaking phenomena: mass spawning. Once a year, usually just after a full moon, corals across entire reefs release their eggs and sperm into the water at the same time. A synchronized burst of creation that turns the sea into a soft, drifting cloud of future life. This timing is not random. It's precisely tuned to the lunar cycle. Without the moon, these delicate species would lose their cosmic cue. Spawning might become mistimed, inefficient, or even fail. Without successful reproduction, coral populations would shrink. And with them would go the thousands of species that rely on reefs for food, shelter, and safety. Move a little farther inland, and you'll find turtles, ancient mariners who return year after year to the same beaches where they were born. Female sea turtles lay their eggs in the sand, often guided by the moon's position and brightness. Hatchlings, only minutes old, rely on the reflection of moonlight on the ocean's surface to guide them toward the waves. Take away that glow, and the tiny turtles are lost. Disoriented, they may wander inland, becoming easy prey or dying from exhaustion. Entire generations could vanish into the dark, never reaching the sea. Then there are predators and prey, those locked in the eternal game of survival. For nocturnal hunters like lions, wolves, and owls, the moon provides just enough light to see by, but not so much as to expose them. Prey animals, too, rely on lunar brightness to time their movements. Some forage only during new moons, when the darkness gives them better cover. Others prefer full moons, when they can spot danger from a distance. This delicate balance would collapse without the moon. Predators that evolve to hunt by moonlight might find their hunting grounds too dark, their prey too difficult to catch. Prey species, in turn, might find the nights endlessly dangerous or confusing. Over time, some might shift their activity to the day, disrupting entire food chains. Ecosystems built on the unspoken agreement of the lunar calendar would face disruption, displacement, even extinction. Birds too are affected. Many migratory birds use the moon and the stars to navigate across vast distances. Some species fly at night, using the moon's position and brightness to orient themselves. Without it, they would have to rely on weaker cues. Migration paths could shift. Birds could become lost, crash from exhaustion, or arrive too early or too late to find food or mates. The skies would grow quieter. Even tiny insects feel the moon's pull. Moths are famously drawn to moonlight, or, more tragically, to artificial lights that mimic it. Their navigation systems are built to keep the moon at a constant angle, helping them fly in straight lines. Without the moon, the evolutionary purpose behind this behaviour would vanish, and with it, much of the balance in nighttime pollination. Many flowers that bloom only at night depend on moths and other nocturnal insects to spread their pollen. In a world without a moon, this quiet floral ballet might fade away. Let's not forget the wolves, those iconic howlers of the night. While the connection between wolves and the full moon is more poetic than scientific, there's still some truth in the myth. Wolves are more active on moonlit nights, often using the brighter conditions to move in packs and hunt more efficiently. Their howls may not be directed at the moon, but the moon is undeniably present in their lives. In the absence of moonlight, their behaviour could become more cautious, more fragmented. The wild would fall quieter, not just in sound, but in spirit. Even underwater, deep in the ocean's twilight zone, the moon reaches with invisible fingers. Zooplankton, tiny creatures at the base of the oceanic food web, rise and fall in sync with the lunar cycle, a migration known as diel vertical migration. This movement brings nutrients from the depths to the surface and feeds everything from whales to fish. The loss of the moon could throw off this ancient cycle, affecting the very building blocks of marine life. Humans too would feel the absence in subtle ways, not only because of the moon's effect on our sleep and dreams, but because the natural world around us, the bird songs, the insect hums, the rustling of creatures in the underbrush, would change. It would become a different night, one less alive, one less familiar. The moon has always been a kind of secret language between the earth and its inhabitants, a rhythm that doesn't speak in words but in waves, light and instinct. When the moon disappears, it's not just a light that vanishes, it's a signal, a shared understanding among millions of species, across oceans and continents. Without it, the world would go silent in ways we can't yet fully imagine. And so, as you lie quietly beneath the darkened sky, remember that every owl that swoops in silence, every turtle that crawls toward the surf, every coral that releases its future into the water, They are all answering the same ancient call. The moon, in her steady way, unites them all. And she's still there, high above, watching over the wild with her soft silver gaze, keeping time, giving direction, and holding the secret rhythms of life. If the moon were to suddenly disappear from the sky, something quiet but profound would fade from our lives. The sky would still be filled with stars, planets would still drift through their orbits, and the sun would continue to rise and fall as always. But in the stillness of night, something would feel off, a presence missing, a silence deeper than it ought to be. For all our scientific understanding and spacefaring ambitions, the moon has never been just a rock in the sky. She has been our first destination beyond Earth, our nearest cosmic companion, and the beginning of our dreams of the stars. Without her, the sky would lose its most intimate reminder that space is not so far away. Since the earliest moments of human awareness, the moon has been a source of wonder and curiosity. When we looked up into the night, it wasn't the distant stars that first called to us. It was the moon, large, luminous, seemingly close enough to touch. Her surface appeared textured, marked with mysterious shadows and shapes. Long before telescopes, people studied her with the naked eye, imagined her face, and told stories about her. They saw animals, gods, spirits, and signs in her glowing disk. She wasn't just a light, she was a presence. And in the modern era, she became something even greater, a destination. When humans first reached space, it was the moon that drew us onward. It was she who received our first tentative steps beyond Earth. In 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on another world, and that world was the moon. Millions of people watched as their grainy images flickered across black and white television screens, voices from another world echoing in living rooms back on Earth. That moment changed everything. For the first time in history, we were no longer bound to our home planet. We had touched the sky. Since then, the moon has remained a symbol of what is possible, a reachable dream. Unlike distant planets and far-off galaxies, she is always there, visible on most nights, reminding us of our potential to explore. Her closeness gives us perspective. When we see her in the sky, we know that we once stood there, that humans have walked upon that silent, dusty surface, that the Earth has been seen from her horizon, a glowing blue sphere, fragile and beautiful in the void. Without the moon, that connection would begin to fade. The most visible sign of our cosmic journey would be gone. A child looking up at the night sky would no longer see the place where humans once walked. The inspiration to reach beyond, to explore, to wonder, it might dim just a little. The stars are majestic, but distant. The moon is close. She is ours. Her disappearance would leave a vacuum, not just in the sky, but in the human spirit. The moon also serves as a bridge between science and poetry, between astronomy and mythology. She is studied in classrooms and written about in songs. Scientists use her surface to understand the history of the solar system. Writers use her glow to express longing, mystery, and peace. She lives in our equations and in our lullabies. No other celestial body holds such a unique place in both the rational and emotional sides of the human mind. Even in modern space exploration, the moon remains central. She is not just a trophy of past missions, she is the launch pad of the future. Plans to return to the moon are already in motion. She may one day host the first off-Earth colonies. She might be the first place we build observatories that see farther into space than ever before. Her resources, ice, minerals, dust, could help us fuel missions deeper into the solar system. She is our cosmic stepping stone. Without her, that path becomes harder. Not just technologically, but psychologically, we would lose the most tangible piece of the sky, the one we could always count on to be there. A place where the boundary between Earth and space was made real, visible, personal. The stars would remain, of course, but they would seem farther away, colder, unreachable. The sky would feel less like a frontier and more like a wall. Even culturally, the moon's disappearance would leave a strange, echoing void. So many stories, myths and rituals centre on the moon. She is the goddess of night, the protector of lovers, the keeper of secrets. She watches over tides and cycles, births and deaths. Art and music have always turned to her fullness and her absence, to her beauty and her mystery. Without her, our languages would lose phrases, our calendars would lose markers, our stories would lose their most familiar celestial character. There's something deeply human about the moon. We see our own lives mirrored in her changing face, waxing and waning, growing and fading, appearing and disappearing, yet always returning. She is change, and yet she is constant. She is distant, and yet feels so near. If the moon vanished, some might try to replace her presence with technology, an artificial satellite perhaps, or a permanent station that shines from the sky. But it would not be the same. It would not carry the weight of memory, of myth, of mystery. It would not inspire poetry. It would not silently pull the oceans. It would not cradle the earth in its ancient gravitational hand. The moon has always been more than a rock. She has been our mirror in the sky, a symbol of reflection, rhythm, and resilience. A reminder that even in darkness there is beauty, that even in silence there is power. Her disappearance would not only change the physical world, it would change how we feel about space, about time, about ourselves. Tonight, as you look up and see her hanging there, full or crescent, rising or setting, know that she is not just a moon. She is history, future, guide, and guardian. And even if you don't see her every night, she is always there, reminding us how close the stars really are. The moon has always been our most ancient companion, and also one of our oldest teachers. Long before we understood gravity or orbits or planetary motion, the moon offered us something essential. A way to measure time. A steady rhythm in the sky. The earliest humans, thousands of years ago, didn't have clocks or calendars, but they had the moon. They watched her change, from a sliver of silver to a glowing disk and back again. And from those changes, they began to build their first understanding of cycles, of months, of the passage of time itself. If the moon had never existed, if she had never risen in the sky to whisper her gentle phases to the world below, it's possible that our concept of time, and even civilization itself, might have developed along a very different path. Consider this. Nearly every ancient culture built its calendar around the moon. Lunar calendars came first. They mark the passing of each moon cycle, roughly 29.5 days, and from this, the concept of a month was born. In fact, the word month itself comes from moon. Even today, in our solar calendars dominated by the sun, remnants of the moon's influence remain in our months' lengths and names. Without the moon, we might never have created a system of time that allowed agriculture, religion, government, or shared culture to flourish. But the moon gave us more than just months. She gave us meaning. Imagine the night sky without her. No luminous orb slowly changing shape from night to night. No reliable cycle to track. The stars remain fixed. The planets wander, but not in a way easily measured by the unaided eye. But the moon, she transforms. She offers predictability. That predictability became sacred. The moon's phases became the backbone of rituals, ceremonies, planting seasons, hunting times, and spiritual practices. In ancient Mesopotamia, Babylonian astronomers recorded the moon's phases in clay tablets. They used her movement to predict eclipses and mark sacred days. In ancient Egypt, the lunar calendar shaped religious festivals and rituals, and temples were aligned with lunar events. In Mesoamerica, the Maya studied the moon with astonishing accuracy, blending her cycles with those of Venus and the Sun into a detailed calendar system. In China, the Mid-Autumn Festival, a celebration of reunion and reflection, has centered on the full moon for over 1,000 years. And in Islamic culture, the sighting of the crescent moon still marks the beginning of each new month. The moon unified people across continents, languages, beliefs. She gave structure to time and spirit alike. Without her, those cultural connections, those shared rhythms, might never have emerged. Or if they had, they would have been more fragmented, more chaotic, harder to align. We might never have built temples to the stars. We might never have gathered to watch the night sky with reverence and awe. She also shaped our myths, perhaps more than any other celestial body. In Greek mythology, she was Selene, the radiant goddess who drove her chariot across the heavens each night. In Roman tradition, she became Luna, the divine embodiment of calm and mystery. In Hinduism, the moon is Chandra, a deity of cool light and emotional depth. In many African and indigenous cultures, the moon was a storyteller, a being who watched over the world, who governed birth, growth and death. The moon was a mirror in the sky, not just of light, but of human experience. Her waxing symbolized hope, expansion, potential. Her waning reminded us of impermanence, of cycles, of letting go. Her fullness was a time of harvest, of celebration. Her darkness, a time for rest and introspection. Even today, people plant their gardens by the moon, meditate by her phases, or make quiet wishes when she rises. She is still a spiritual guide, even in a world of satellites and skyscrapers. Without her, that mirror would be gone. We would still have the sun, bright, powerful, commanding. But the sun rules the day. It blazes, it reveals. The moon rules the night. She softens, she hides, she whispers. In a moonless world, night would feel more exposed, more clinical perhaps, or less inviting. the quiet moods of the evening would feel incomplete. There would be no full moon rising over mountaintops, no silver path cast across the surface of a lake, no glowing orb to accompany lovers' walks or solitary wanderings. Even language would be poorer without her. Consider how often we use lunar imagery. Moonstruck, once in a blue moon, over the moon, promise me the moon. Entire languages are peppered with metaphors and idioms rooted in her presence. She lives in lullabies, love songs, and ancient stories passed down through generations. And in modern times, she continues to inspire. Artists paint her. Poets describe her. Photographers wait hours to capture her rising behind cityscapes or forests. Children dream of astronauts leaping across her surface. And the rest of us? We often look up at her, even without thinking, just to feel something. A sense of peace, of perspective, of timelessness. If the moon had never been there to guide us, to mark our nights, to inspire our dreams, it's hard to say what kind of creatures we would be. Maybe more rational, more precise, but perhaps less soulful, less poetic, less in tune with the rhythms of nature. She is more than a rock in space. She is a thread woven through our history, our hearts, and our imagination. Her disappearance would erase not only light from the night sky, but meaning from our shared human story. And yet, she remains. Above us now, watching with quiet grace, marking time not with ticking hands but with phases, always changing, always returning, always reminding us of where we came from and what still matters. Long before telescopes, rockets, or space probes, the moon was already speaking to us. Not in words, but in her constant presence, in her slow and graceful changes, in the mysteries etched into her surface. Long before we understood how she came to be, we felt her significance. And when we finally did begin to understand her origins, we uncovered one of the most dramatic and beautiful stories in the entire history of the cosmos, the story of how the moon was born. It begins over 4.5 billion years ago in a young and violent solar system. The Earth, newly formed, was still a molten world, chaotic, unstable, and constantly bombarded by debris left over from the birth of the Sun and the planets. Then one day, something extraordinary happened. A planet-sized body, roughly the size of Mars, hurtled toward Earth. This ancient object, which scientists have named Theia, collided with our young planet in a massive, world-shattering impact. The force of the collision was unimaginable, hotter than any volcano, more powerful than any explosion humanity has ever known. Mountains melted, oceans of magma sprayed into the sky, and from that chaos, something new was born. The debris from that impact, vaporized rock, metal, and dust, was flung into orbit around the Earth. Over time, this cloud of glowing material began to cool and come together, pulled into a single, coherent shape by gravity. Slowly, the pieces merged into a sphere. That sphere became the moon. It's hard to imagine that such violence could give rise to something so peaceful. And yet, that is the story of the moon's birth. Out of destruction came beauty. Out of chaos came calm. It is one of nature's deepest paradoxes, that something so gentle in appearance could have emerged from an event so wild and cataclysmic. From that moment on, the Earth was no longer alone. The moon became our partner, orbiting us every month, watching over us like a silent twin. She shaped the tides, stabilized our tilt, lengthened our days, and set the pace of life on Earth in ways that are still unfolding. But she did more than that. The moon became a mirror, not just in the physical sense, as she reflects the light of the sun, but in the symbolic sense. Her surface, marked with craters and scars, holds the history of the solar system. Unlike Earth, which is constantly renewed by weather, water and tectonic movement, the moon has no such erosion. Her face is ancient. Every crater, every mark, is a frozen moment in time, the story of collisions and silence, of time stretching across billions of years. When we study the moon, we are looking at our past. Her rocks are older than most found on Earth. Her surface records the history of the early solar system, like a cosmic diary that never forgets. She is a window into where we came from, what the universe was like in its turbulent youth, and how our planet found its way to stability. That alone would make her precious, but her importance doesn't stop at the scientific. The moon has been humanity's first teacher in the sky. As early humans began to ask questions, what is that light? Why does it change shape? Why does it disappear and then return? The moon provided the first mysteries that led to wonder and eventually to knowledge. Before we understood gravity, we saw the moon's pull on the tides. Before we had written language, we tracked her phases in carved bones and painted cave walls. Before we could explain the eclipse, we told stories of dragons and gods who swallowed her whole. She made us storytellers. She made us observers. She made us curious. And then, many millennia later, she gave us something even more profound. A dream. Of all the bodies in the sky, the moon is the closest. She is within reach. We cannot touch the stars, but we can touch her. And we did. When Apollo 11 landed on the moon in 1969, it was not just a moment of technological triumph. It was the fulfillment of a longing that had lived in the human soul for thousands of years. We reached out, and for the first time, we touched another world. We stood where no human had stood before, and looked back at our home, small, blue, and fragile, hanging alone in the vastness of space. That moment changed us. It reminded us that we are not trapped on Earth, that we can dream beyond what we know, that we can travel, explore, and find meaning even in the void. And yet the moon remained unchanged. She did not speak, did not blink, did not tremble. She welcomed us quietly. Her surface, dusty and barren, seemed untouched by time, as though she had always been there, waiting. Without the moon, none of this would have happened. We might still be staring into the sky, wondering. We might never have taken that first step beyond Earth. The moon gave us not just the ability to dream, but the direction. She was a destination, familiar, mysterious and real. If the moon were to vanish now, we would lose more than a light in the night sky. We would lose our most ancient record of the past. We would lose the marker that guided our first questions and the destination that answered them. We would lose the one place in space where humanity has already left footprints. There is something comforting in knowing that, above us, there is a place that has seen every age of Earth's history. A place that was born from the same chaos that formed us. A place that carries our echoes, The footsteps, the flags, the discarded spacecraft, still resting silently in the dust. She is a witness to the birth of the Earth, to the rise of life, to the dawn of consciousness, and she is still there, even now, high above, keeping time, holding memory, waiting for us to remember just how rare, how miraculous her presence truly is. There is something deeply magical about witnessing a solar eclipse. The world seems to hold its breath as the sky darkens in the middle of the day. The temperature drops, and the familiar brilliance of the sun is slowly blotted out by a black disk, a perfect circle surrounded by a radiant halo of light. Birds fall silent, animals become restless, and people gather in awe as the moon passes between the earth and the sun, aligning in such precise geometry that it momentarily turns day into night. It's one of the most extraordinary celestial events we can experience, and we owe it entirely to the moon. But what if the moon disappeared? The sky would never again dim with such wonder. Solar eclipses would vanish. Not just the dramatic total eclipses that mesmerize the world, but even the partial and annular eclipses that ripple across continents in fleeting shadows. Without the moon, this perfect cosmic alignment would become impossible. The sun would reign unchallenged in the sky, its light never obscured, its shape never framed by that delicate, otherworldly ring of fire. A phenomenon that has fascinated humanity for millennia would become nothing more than a memory. The reason solar eclipses are so rare and so breathtaking lies in the remarkable coincidence of the moon's size and distance from Earth. Though the sun is about 400 times larger in diameter than the moon, it is also about 400 times farther away. This means that from Earth's surface, both appear to be nearly the same size in the sky. It's this perfect proportion that allows the moon to just barely cover the sun during a total solar eclipse. The result is a visual spectacle unlike anything else, a moment where the boundaries of light and darkness blur, and we're given a glimpse into the sublime mechanics of the cosmos. If the moon were gone, that coincidence would cease. No other celestial body is large enough, close enough, or correctly aligned to replace her. We might still witness lunar eclipses of distant moons through telescopes, or marvel at astronomical simulations, but the visceral experience of standing beneath a sky gone dark in broad daylight would vanish forever. Eclipses have never been just scientific curiosities. Throughout history, they have carried spiritual, emotional, and cultural weight. Ancient civilizations viewed them with reverence and fear. To early sky watchers, a solar eclipse was a moment of divine intervention, the sun, the life-giver, being swallowed by shadow. In some traditions, it was seen as a dragon devouring the sun, or a cosmic battle playing out in the heavens. In others, it was a time for silence, for reflection, for ritual. In China, ancient records tell of solar eclipses as early as 2137 BCE, and emperors would assign astronomers the duty of predicting them, believing that the fate of the empire hung in the balance. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztecs tracked eclipses with incredible precision, linking them to their calendar systems and to omens of change. In Hindu mythology, eclipses are explained through the story of Rahu and Ketu, celestial beings who attempt to swallow the sun or moon, only to be thwarted, explaining the fleeting nature of the event. These stories, rooted in wonder and fear, reveal a truth deeper than science. Eclipses connect us to something larger than ourselves. They remind us that we live in a universe of motion, balance, and mystery. That our lives are influenced not only by the earth beneath our feet, but by the sky above our heads. The moon's ability to hide the sun, even for a few minutes, reminds us how delicate our position in the cosmos truly is. Modern science has demystified eclipses, but not diminished their power. Today, people travel across countries, across oceans, just to stand in the path of totality, that narrow band where the eclipse is complete. They gather in fields on mountaintops or at sea, wearing special glasses and watching the world transform. Cameras click, children gasp, time seems to stop. It's one of the few moments left in modern life where people of all backgrounds, scientists, artists, travellers and dreamers, come together to share the same moment of awe. To be reminded that the universe is not just out there, but here, surrounding us, capable of moving us deeply with a simple alignment of light and shadow. Without the moon, this experience would be lost. Our sky would be missing one of its most powerful tools of wonder. Generations would grow up having never seen an eclipse. Our collective memory would gradually let go of what it felt like to stand in that strange, silvery twilight, to look up and see the stars shining in the middle of the day, to see the sun's corona, its hidden crown, revealed only when the moon dares to step in front of it. The moon's absence would also mean the loss of lunar eclipses, those haunting moments when the Earth's shadow slowly creeps across the moon's surface, turning it deep red, like a glowing ember in the sky. These events, too, are part of our shared experience. They invite us to think of shadows not as absence, but as transformation, of darkness not as fear, but as a passage into something meaningful. Eclipses, both solar and lunar, are celestial symphonies. They speak to timing, geometry, gravity, and the elegant dance of bodies in space. But they also speak to emotion, memory, and presence. They give us pause. They ask us to look up. They remind us, if only for a moment, that we are part of something vast and mysterious. So much of life is lived in routine, in the known, in the expected. But eclipses interrupt that. They bring surprise. They demand our attention. And the moon is the conductor of that symphony, the shadow maker, the light stealer, the quiet architect of awe. Without her, the sun would shine every day without contest, but something in us would remain unmet. Some longing would go unanswered. A part of our connection to the universe, to its rhythms, its beauty, its silence, would fade into myth. And so, as you drift into sleep tonight, know that above you, the moon still turns, still orbits, still waits for those rare, exquisite moments when she steps between us and the sun. When the sky dims and the world remembers how to be still, how to wonder, how to watch. Every moment of every day, the moon is pulling on the earth. Not just on the oceans, where her influence is most visible in the tides, but on the very crust of the planet itself. This pull is not something we can see or feel in our daily lives, yet it is always there. A quiet, persistent force shaping the earth over vast spans of time. It is gravity, and the moon's gravitational bond with Earth is one of the most intimate relationships in the solar system. Without her, that relationship would come undone, and the planet beneath our feet would begin to change. Gravity holds everything together, from the smallest grain of sand to the largest galaxies in the universe. The Earth and the Moon are locked in a delicate gravitational dance. As the Moon orbits Earth, it tugs on us, and Earth responds with a subtle bulging, not just in the oceans, but in the solid ground. This deformation, known as an Earth tide, causes the planet's surface to rise and fall by tiny amounts, often just a few centimeters. It's almost imperceptible, but it matters. These small shifts relieve stress in the crust, influence volcanic activity, and even affect how heat moves through Earth's interior. Now imagine if the Moon were to disappear. That constant gravitational tug would vanish, and with it, the dynamic tension that helps stabilize our planet's internal energy. Over time, the redistribution of Earth's mass would shift. The slightly oblong shape of Earth, created in part by the Moon's pull, would begin to settle. Our planet might become more spherical, more uniform in structure, but also more static. And in that stillness, new imbalances might arise. You see, Earth is not just a solid rock. It is a living system of molten flows, tectonic plates, and deep subterranean currents. These forces drive the movement of continents, the formation of mountains, the eruptions of volcanoes, and the opening of deep ocean trenches. The Moon, through its gravitational interaction, acts as a brake and a stimulator, modulating some of that internal energy. Without her, these flows could slow in some regions and become more erratic in others. Earth's rotation, already affected by the Moon, would begin to respond differently. Without the Moon's tidal drag, that gentle slowing mechanism we often overlook, the Earth might start to spin faster over immense stretches of time. And that increase in speed could subtly alter the way the crust and mantle behave. Centrifugal force at the equator would increase, causing the planet to bulge more noticeably. This could affect tectonic activity in equatorial regions, adding stress to fault lines and altering patterns of seismic movement. But there's another layer to this: the role of the Moon in Earth's axial precession. Precession is the slow, wobbling motion of Earth's rotational axis, like a spinning top tilting slightly as it turns. This wobble occurs over a 26,000-year cycle and affects everything from long-term climate patterns to the orientation of the stars in our night sky. The Moon helps stabilize this motion. Without her, Earth's precession would become more extreme and unpredictable. The axis might tilt further, altering the distribution of sunlight on Earth and possibly triggering climate shifts and ice ages on unfamiliar timelines. And let's not forget the magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field is generated by the movement of molten iron in its outer core, a geodynamo influenced by the planet's rotation and internal dynamics. Though the Moon is not the only factor at play, her gravitational influence may contribute to maintaining that complex internal flow. Without her, the fine balance of forces that sustain our magnetic shield could shift. If that field were to weaken or become unstable, the consequences would be far-reaching. Earth's magnetic field protects us from solar radiation, cosmic rays, and the harsh conditions of space. A weakened field could allow more radiation to reach the surface, affecting not only technology, but life itself. There's also the curious matter of Earth's crustal plates, the great jigsaw pieces of land and sea that float atop the molten mantle. These plates move because of convection currents deep within the Earth, but their pace and pattern may be subtly influenced by the Moon's gravitational rhythm. Take that rhythm away, and the flow of heat and pressure might become uneven, causing tectonic shifts that are more abrupt or more chaotic. Earthquakes could become more frequent in certain areas, or dormant volcanoes might awaken. Continental drift might slow or stall in unexpected ways, altering the shape of our world over geologic time. Even the planet's orientation could be affected. The Moon currently helps maintain the alignment between Earth's core and mantle, a connection that, though mysterious, is part of the balance that keeps Earth's internal layers functioning together. If the Moon disappeared, that alignment could gradually loosen. We might see an increase in events like true polar wander, where the entire solid Earth shifts slightly relative to its rotational axis. This isn't something we would feel directly, but over millions of years, it could shift the locations of the poles, altering climate and geography alike. The Moon's gravity is not loud. It doesn't roar or flash or tremble. It works in whispers. But those whispers have shaped the very structure of our world. Without them, Earth would continue to turn, the sky would still shine, and the continents would still drift. But something deep inside the planet would begin to change, slowly, silently, but inevitably. Our planet is not a passive rock. It is a body in motion, responding constantly to the unseen hands of the universe. The Moon is one of those hands. She doesn't just light the night or guide the tides. She shapes the very bones of the Earth. She holds us, pulls us, steadies us. Without her, the ground beneath our feet would remain, but over time it would feel just a little less certain, a little more alien, a little more alone. So tonight, as you lie still and feel the weight of the Earth beneath you, remember that the Moon is also part of that stillness. Her gravity reaches through the darkness, touching oceans, crust, and core alike. She holds the Earth in an invisible embrace, ancient, silent, unbreakable. She is not only above us, she is within us. For centuries, the Moon has captivated not only poets and philosophers, but also scientists and dreamers with a different kind of vision, one rooted in exploration, ambition, and the future. Long before humanity launched its first satellite, or sent its first astronaut into space, the Moon stood as a symbol of what might one day be possible. A glowing world within reach. The first stepping stone into the wider universe. And now, as we look ahead to a future among the stars, the Moon is still central to our plans. But if she were to vanish, what would become of those dreams? The Moon isn't just a beautiful object in the night sky. It is the foundation of our most realistic plans for living beyond Earth. Space agencies around the world, NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, and private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, have long envisioned using the Moon as a launch pad, a testing ground, and a home base. Its proximity, just a 3-day journey away, makes it ideal for practicing deep space missions. It's close enough to return from if something goes wrong, yet far enough to challenge the limits of human endurance, technology, and innovation. Plans to build lunar bases are already in development. These bases could house astronauts for weeks or months, allowing them to conduct experiments, mine resources, and learn how to survive in harsh, extraterrestrial conditions. The moon's low gravity, about 1/6 that of Earth, offers unique advantages. It's easier to launch rockets from her surface. It requires less energy to escape her gravitational pull, making her a natural launch platform for missions to Mars and beyond. But without the moon, all of that disappears. Not just the infrastructure, but the vision. The roadmap we've drawn, from Earth to the moon to Mars and beyond, would lose its first vital checkpoint. It would be as if the staircase to the stars suddenly lost its first step. Mars would remain far away, distant and dangerous, with no place to rest along the way. The learning curve would steepen. The risk would increase. The dream would become harder to grasp. The moon also offers something else that is rare and precious: resources. Lunar soil, or regolith, contains elements like oxygen, silicon, aluminum, titanium, and even water ice, particularly at the poles. Water is more than a necessity for life. It can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen to make rocket fuel. A lunar refueling station would make deep space travel more sustainable and economical. Without the moon, we lose access to this vital space resource. Every mission beyond Earth would have to carry more supplies, more fuel, more risk. Moreover, the moon offers the perfect location for scientific observation. A radio telescope on the far side of the moon, shielded from Earth's electromagnetic noise, would allow astronomers to peer deeper into the universe than ever before. It would be the quietest place in the solar system for studying cosmic signals, the early formation of galaxies, and the mysteries of dark matter and dark energy. The moon's stability and lack of atmosphere make it ideal for long-term observations. Its loss would rob us of an irreplaceable vantage point, a silent observatory in the sky. Beyond the practical and scientific, there is a symbolic power in the moon that fuels imagination and unites people across the globe. When humans first walked on the moon in 1969, it wasn't just an American achievement. It was a human one. People everywhere watched, held their breath, and felt, perhaps for the first time, that we could go beyond what seemed possible. It gave us a new perspective, not just of space, but of Earth itself. Astronauts have often said that the most profound moment of space travel is not looking outward, but looking back. Seeing Earth, small, blue, delicate, hanging in the vastness of space. The moon gave us that view. Without her, we might never have looked at ourselves in that way. We might never have understood just how fragile and precious our home planet truly is. The moon has also inspired countless works of science fiction and fantasy. She has been the setting for stories of alien bases, secret civilizations, and future colonies. She is part of our collective imagination. From Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon to modern space operas, the moon is more than just a location. She is a symbol of what we might become, of what we dare to dream. If she were to vanish, that collective story would change. There would be a hole in the narrative of progress, in the shared vision of humanity's place in the cosmos. We could, of course, adjust. We could build orbital platforms, or attempt asteroid mining, or even leap directly to Mars. But something essential would be missing. Not just the ease or efficiency, not just the stepping stone, but the familiarity. The moon is a place we can see with the naked eye. She's a constant reminder that space is not just a concept, it is a real, reachable place. Children grow up seeing her and imagining astronauts walking there, imagining themselves walking there. She grounds our ambitions in something visible and near. Take her away, and the stars seem farther, the dream dims. There is also an emotional weight to the moon that cannot be measured in missions or megawatts. She represents continuity. She has seen every stage of human history, every civilization, every war, every peace. She has watched silently as humanity learned to farm, to write, to build, to dream. And now, as we prepare to become an interplanetary species, she remains our closest neighbour, our guide. To lose her would be to lose more than a future base. It would be to lose the sense of having a next step at all. So tonight, as you close your eyes and let your thoughts drift toward the stars, remember that the moon is still there, not just shining, but waiting. Waiting for us to come back. Waiting to be a place where dreams turn into experiments, where hope turns into habitation, where the future begins. She is not only our past, she is the bridge to all that lies ahead. In a night sky without the moon, the stars would shine brighter, more vividly, more sharply than ever before. For those in remote places far from the glow of cities, the absence of moonlight would make the Milky Way blaze across the sky with a clarity few have ever seen. The constellations would stand out more boldly. Saturn's rings might become visible to the unaided eye under perfect conditions. Nebulae and distant galaxies would flicker in places once dimmed by lunar glow. To the astronomer, it might seem like a gift, but to the human spirit, something would still feel deeply, unmistakably wrong. Because without the moon, the sky would lose its emotional warmth. That sense of presence, that constant companion who watched over the night, would be gone. The stars, beautiful as they are, do not change shape. They do not grow and shrink in the sky. They do not rise at dusk and follow you home like the moon does. They are distant, cold, and eternal. The moon, in contrast, is personal, close. She moves, she hides, she returns. Her patterns are familiar and comforting, a gentle reminder that time is passing, but in a rhythm we've always known. Without that soft, silver light casting gentle shadows on rooftops, fields, and forests, the night would feel somehow more exposed. The stars would be brilliant, yes, but their brilliance would feel alien. The moon makes the night approachable. Without her, the sky might feel overwhelming, too vast, too silent, too unknowable. A place of observation, but not intimacy. And then there's the silence, not the physical kind, but the emotional one. The kind you feel when you step outside on a moonless night and the world is still, not just quiet, but emptied of something. The rustle of wind in the trees, the distant call of an owl, the hum of distant traffic, all of it would carry a different tone under a star-only sky. The world would feel flatter. The shadows would be inkier, less forgiving. The emotional space of the night would shift. No longer a sanctuary of reflection, but something colder, something more distant from the human heart. Children would grow up under skies that never held a glowing, changing face. They would learn about the moon in books, in stories passed down, in photographs and simulations. But they would never see her rise above the horizon like a lantern in the dusk. They would never lie awake at night and watch her drift past their window, or whisper wishes to her from the grass. They would miss the feeling of being watched over, of having a celestial witness to their small lives, of knowing that no matter how far from home they wandered, the moon was there too, looking down from the same sky. Artists would still paint the stars, but the sense of quiet longing the moon inspires would fade. The emotional palette of the night would change. Music would lose a recurring motif. Language would lose a symbol. The emotional connection between the human soul and the sky would become more distant, more abstract. The moon, after all, is not just a light. She's a presence. She reminds us that something can be both distant and deeply close. That beauty does not have to be constant. It can wax and wane, grow and fade, and still return again. In her absence, the sky would become a stage with no lead actor, a play of stars with no central figure, beautiful but silent, bright but a little colder, a little less alive. And still, even in that moonless world, humanity would reach for meaning. Throughout history, the moon has inspired myths, poems, prayers, and rituals. She has appeared in dreams, in visions, in the quiet moments before sleep. She has stood for love, for time, for death and rebirth. Cultures around the world gave her names, shaped their calendars around her, worshipped her, feared her, longed for her. She became not just a celestial object, but a symbol of femininity, of mystery, of the divine. If the moon were gone, well, we would find something else to replace her, not in the sky, but in our stories. We would look to the stars and invent new tales. Perhaps Venus, with her rare brightness, would take on some of the moon's old roles. Perhaps Mars, the red wanderer, would become a symbol of passion and prophecy. Maybe the Milky Way itself would be given new meaning. A road of souls, a river of dreams. But these legends would be born from absence. They would arise from a need to fill the quiet left behind. Our new myths would be shaped not by presence, but by longing. And they would be tinged with a sadness, the kind that comes from knowing something sacred was lost. Even the way we speak would change. Moonstruck, once in a blue moon, honeymoon, shoot for the moon, all would fade into historical curiosity. Ancient songs about moonlit nights would become echoes of a forgotten time. Our metaphors for love, madness, hope, and mystery would have to evolve, because the symbol that once tied them together would no longer rise into the sky each evening. Yet humans are storytellers. We need meaning. We need myth. In the absence of the moon, we would create new legends. Stories of a lost light, a fallen guardian, a vanished twin. Perhaps we would whisper that the moon was once here and left us for reasons unknown, or that she watches from another part of the cosmos, waiting to return. The moon, once real, would become a myth herself, a celestial memory passed down through stories, dreams, and longing. Even in her absence, she would live on in our minds. And finally, there would come the moment when, perhaps, we say goodbye. In the last chapter of this strange and gentle journey, we pause. We look up at the sky, moonless, vast and filled with stars, and we remember. We remember what she gave us: light, rhythm, balance, story, awe. We remember the quiet thrill of a full moon rising above the hills, the way her glow touched rooftops, fields and faces. We remember the tides she pulled, the dreams she stirred, the path she lit through the forest or across the ocean. We remember the stories told under her watch, the kisses shared, the prayers whispered, the songs sung. We remember how she waxed and waned like our own lives, growing fuller, then fading, then returning once more. And even in her absence, we feel her. Not in the sky, perhaps, but in our memories, in our language, in the architecture of our imaginations. She shaped us, quietly, patiently, without asking for anything in return. The moon was never just a satellite. She was a companion, a guardian, a mirror. And now, as you drift into sleep, know this: the moon may vanish in our story tonight, but she remains in the real world, still glowing, still watching, still waiting. High above, in the silence of space, she moves, ancient and steady, a witness to all our days and nights. And in her gentle light, all our dreams still rise.